now what we have here, again, if I try to do a drop test on it, it's still kind of wanting to go forward too much. So I'm going to need to bring this back on the stage a little bit. And that's getting pretty darn close. I mean, look at this. So I think we're almost on that sweet spot. Let's see here how this goes. 1/1002. It's a little bit too fast, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and bring these spars in a little bit more. Now I got to move this. Every time you bring that spar closer, you got to move the stage up, move it up on the stage slightly to compensate. Let's try again. 1/1002. So now we're just about there. You see how this drop time? 1/1002. So that, I'm going to say that's pretty close. I mean, you can fine tune it, but I think you get the idea. If you want to slow the drop time, you just make a few more counterclockwise changes here on this guy. All right. But this gets to the point where I was talking about in the instructions that come with this thing. They really don't talk so much about doing all these things simultaneously the way I've done it here. And you really do need to be working all of this at the same time. That's one of the things that I learned, that once I realized, oh gee, you know, every time I make a change here, I got to go up here and move this back. I can't just set everything here and then worry about this later. It all really kind of works together. And I think you'll find it much easier to balance it when you just kind of work once you have the weights, and the weights should be probably one of the easier things to figure out. And then once you get the weights in there, then it's just a matter of moving the spar around and moving this thing back and forth here on the stage, you know, to keep it balanced. Here it looks like it could come back just slightly. Oops, that might be too much. Yeah, that was too much. A little bit too much. There we go. Okay. Now, there is another adjustment ring under here that you can also use to make fine adjustments, but I personally haven't really touched this at all because I've just found that I can do everything between the weights and moving this stage up here and using the knob here to control the length of the spar, that I can actually get everything done that I need to get done. Perhaps this might be useful, say, if you were going to be changing out the lens or something and you didn't want to go through and change everything, that maybe just a minor change up here would affect the lens. So now I think we've got it pretty close here. Let's try the drop time one more time. 1/1002. 1/1002. It might actually be just a bit slower than that. Not much though. It's really, really, really close. Okay, let's move him up a little bit more. There we go. Let's try one more time. 1/1002. I like this here. Okay. 1/1002. That is good. That is good. That is where I want it. So now let's take a look at this guy. He's a little bit, see, now we're at that point here where really it just means you've got this little trim knob here. You can tilt it. It's a little tilted down, but now it's so close that just a micro adjustment by, in this case, I'm turning the knob here clockwise. Just turn that little guy a bit and see how it affects it. It should be tilting him up. And there we are. Now what's happening is it's kind of going a little bit to the right as well. So there's also another trim knob under here, so you can control the left to right tilt. But in this case, actually, I'm looking at, there's a, you can see here there's a bubble, and it looks pretty much in the center here when I have it set up this way. So I think that's going to be pretty close. It seems like it's pretty happy there. Maybe just a slight adjustment here. Whoops, that might have been too much. Let's see. Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, I actually think that looks pretty darn good. So let's try the drop test one more time. 1/1002, and I think that looks good. So let's take it off here. And let's see what happens here. Let me play with this. So I'm going to move him this way, move him this way. See how he stays pretty well balanced? I'd say we're really, really close. I mean, you can continue to make little micro adjustments, but the hard part's done. I mean, it really is at this point. So this was just kind of an overview of weight and balance on this thing, and I hope you found it useful. It took me a few weeks to figure this whole thing out, but now that I kind of have broken it down to the steps that I've just shown here, it really does simplify it. I mean, if you think about it, it really is just a matter of adjusting the spars and then just moving this stage back and forth at this point. Once you have the weights, and like I said, the front weight's pretty well determined based on how much this whole load is up here. And the bottom weights you can experiment with. And if you have too much bottom weight on here, right, you will not be able to get this thing to come down like it is now with the spar being down here. If you have too much weight down here, even by bringing the spars all the way in, it's still going to be too top heavy. Okay, so that's, bottom heavy actually. So it's still going to be too bottom heavy, and that tells you that you've got too much weight on the bottom. So the key here is, you've got the right amount of weight down here, because you will be able to go from being bottom heavy to top heavy. In other words, where it's just basically falling like a rock, right? If I do this drop test, it's going to fall, really fast. That's way too bottom heavy. And then it's going to be too top heavy if it's always like this, okay? Meaning that no matter what you do, it sits up here like this. When you have the right amount of weight and you go from being the spars all the way together, as far in as they can go, and you can go from being top heavy to bottom heavy, then you've got the right amount of weight. So then it's just a matter of getting those spars adjusted right, and then fiddling with the trims up here. I do find that these trims, I seem to have to fiddle with them quite a bit, but usually once I get them set, they're okay for a while. But every time I put this thing together, of course, I'm going to have to go back and retrim it. So like right now, he's showing a little bit too much. I need to readjust it slightly there because it was tilting too much to the right. So yeah, it's a little bit too much. Let's see here. There we go. All right, so we've just basically gone through the steps. We've weight and balanced this Canon 5D Mark III with the Rokinon 24mm Cine lens. And yeah, I hope that was useful. And I'll do some more footage with this thing, and maybe even go over a little bit more of the trimming. And because this video is getting kind of long, I'll probably have to break it into two. I kind of knew that it would take a while to do this. We'll catch you in the next video.